Hi, my name is Cornelia Ward, and today I'm going to talk about the 5 success tips to finding your true calling. And my name is Cornelia Ward, and my website is goforwardfearlesslybook.com. It's a great book that's coming out in a few weeks that helps people basically navigate transitions more easily and quickly. So it's kind of got a spiritual element as well as a very practical element. And you'll notice I'm wearing a hat and a scarf. And the reason is, I'm going to actually tell you at the end of the video. I'm not going to tell you yet why I'm wearing a hat. It's kind of fun. But I need it where I'm living. Okay, so we're talking about life purpose and finding your calling. So actually, my life purpose is, I think, to help other people find their true calling. And so I love doing this work and sharing tips with people. Okay, so 5 tips. The first tip is probably going to sound a little crazy. It's going to sound like it has nothing to do with the topic, but it's something I'm really passionate about, and it's practicing good self-care. And the reason for that is that when you are thinking about making a change in your career, or let's say you're going to maybe leave your job and become a full-time parent, whatever that transition that you might be thinking is your calling, it's a little stressful. And when you go through transitions, it's like really important to practice really good self-care in order to kind of smooth out the bumps as you go along. So that is tip number 1, to practice good self-care. Okay. The second tip is to create a good financial backup plan. And there's actually a whole chapter about this in the life purpose section of the book I just mentioned, goforwardfearlesslybook.com. And that chapter talks about actually my story. I used to work in the financial services field, and I did that. I was actually working in financial services when the crash happened in 2008. And it was about 5 months later, I think, that I ended up leaving, which was not connected to the crash. But I had really been doing this job for 4 or 5 years and, was successful in financial services, but really felt the constraints of working for other people, even though I was pretty independent as a broker. And so I actually pretty much crashed and burned. I think it was April, May of 2009. I got really depressed, and I was trying to make it work, and I was the only breadwinner in my household, so the whole financial piece had to get figured out because I knew I was just not going to make it in this job. Even though I was successful, I was not happy and really needed actually to work for myself, which is what I do now. And so what I did is I put together a financial backup plan. And I actually, in my book, I'll actually can give you more information, gives you the steps that I took. I'm not, this is a disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. You're a financial advisor. You need to, get your own advisor to look at your own particular situation. But since we're talking about my story, what I did is I put together basically a bunch of financial ducks to make sure before I left my job that I was going to be good for a couple, 3 years. So that's what I did there. And so that is tip number 2, is to create a good financial backup plan before you leave your job. Tip number 3 is to identify your life purpose. And I also talk about this in the book, that actually we all know Jack Canfield, right, from the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And he wrote a book, I think about 2000 or 2001, he wrote a book called The Success Principles, and I highly recommend that book. It's actually out on audiobook, unabridged, but still there's some really good stuff in there. And the book I would highly recommend. It's actually on my website under resources if you want to check that out and click through to Amazon as an affiliate link. So in that book, there's an exercise that I use for clients and students in my practice called the Life Purpose Exercise. And it's really fast and easy. It's kind of a no-brainer. You don't just sit there kind of wondering how to fill in the blanks. It just really comes from your heart, and it's a great way to identify what your life purpose might be. Okay, so that's step number 3, is filling out that exercise, for instance, or a tool that works for you. If you would like me to send you, I have a 1-page PDF of Jack's life purpose statement that I give to my own students and clients. And if you'd like to email me, because this is not yet available on the website, you can email me at Cornelia at corneliaward.com. And Cornelia is Cornelia. Ward is WARD. So it's Cornelia at corneliaward.com for the life purpose statement. Okay, so on to tip number 4. You should do informational interviews. So you're thinking about leaving a job, you're thinking about going into a new career, especially if you're doing something really, really different than what you're doing right now. So this is what I did. So before I was in financial services, I was actually working in the public sector. Very different from the financial services field. And I was actually the bicycle and pedestrian planner for the city of Burlington in Burlington, Vermont. And I did have a background in community economic development, so I had a little bit of the business and money thing, but I did not know anything really about financial services. I just knew it was kind of a challenging field. And so what I did is I did a bunch of informational interviews where I would just have a certain questions, and I would call people up in the financial services field who were very experienced, had been there for a long time, and who were successful, and women and men. And I interviewed them, and it really helped me. All this research helped me. You do get, I'll warn you, if you do this step, you do get a little overwhelmed with the research, but just, follow a process, and certainly you can connect with me and I can help you identify next steps and how to get through that kind of research process so you don't get overwhelmed. But what you may find, as I did, is I interviewed a bunch of different people and did a lot of research, and I found that when I came to people and asked them about their expertise, I actually ended up with 3 or 4 job offers before I finished with that whole process. And remember, I had no background in financial services. It's not like I was going from one firm to another firm in financial services. It was something totally new to me. But I think people saw, I think part of it, really to be totally transparent, there aren't a lot of women in financial services. I think that was a big one. And then, so, they see a woman who, maybe, can talk and her brain works and all that stuff, which, there are a lot of really good, bright women out there, certainly, who are capable of doing lots of different kind of jobs, including financial services. But they could, get a sense of who I was. And so a lot of people actually decided that they wanted to give me a job offer. So that was something to kind of turn the tables, get somebody in front of you. You're just collecting information, and just don't be surprised if you end up with some job offers. Okay, so that's tip number 4, do informational interviews. Tip number 5 is to find a mentor. So that's somebody in the field that you want to go into. And so let's say you do decide to go into the field. Let's say you do what I did and you want to get into financial services, and you interviewed a bunch of people in financial services. Well, you've already developed relationships with some of those people. And by the way, you've sent them a nice thank you note afterwards for their time, not an email, but a nice handwritten thank you note on stationery, which will help you to stand out even more. But, it's just a nice gesture to send them a thank you for their time. And what you'll find is that some of those folks actually might be great mentors. So, you can approach them again and just say, can I take you out to lunch? And now, rather than doing general research like you did in the informational interview, you're actually getting more specific. And so you'll get really specific about, what is it that you would recommend to somebody who's just starting out? I'm having this particular problem. What would you recommend here? What did you do? And people love to kind of pay it forward because somebody helped them out when they were just getting started in whatever field that they're currently in, and they're happy to help other people because they know what it's like to start from scratch. And you don't have to start from scratch and reinvent the wheel, because you've got lots of great people, I'm sure, in your community or outside your community who would be happy to help you. And just remember that when you do ask for their time, you're going to buy the coffee, you're going to buy the lunch, if you get together. They're not going to pay for it because they're giving you their time. And you're going to send a thank you note again, of course. And also think about, how can you help them? Maybe there's a cause that they're particularly interested in. Do something where you can make a donation, spend some time, whatever it is, volunteering in a cause that is near and dear to their heart. So just think about how it is that you can, make a contribution and support them as well in the things that are important to them. So those are the 5 steps. Number 1 is practice good self-care, which you should do anyway, regardless of whether you're looking for a different life purpose. Number 2 is to create a financial backup plan before you leave the job. Number 3 is to do some exercises around identifying your life purpose, whatever those are, or the one that I recommended from Jack's book. Number 4 is to do informational interviews. And number 5 is to find a mentor. So I want you to go ahead and identify one step right now. Just grab a piece of paper, identify one step that you can take right now, either based on the information in this video or just an inspired idea that you might have just gotten. What is the next step that you can do to make that happen? Get it in your calendar, take steps on that today if you can, and get someone to hold you accountable to moving forward. So would love to have you check out my book at goforwardfearlesslybook.com/pre-order, where you can pre-order the book right there. You can get it via paper, you can get it via ebook, and I will have an audiobook available on my site very soon. So thanks for listening to the free tips. I hope it was helpful to you. Feel free to share the video if you think it would be helpful to other people. And okay, so let's talk about the hat and the scarf. I live in Burlington, Vermont. I still live here. I mentioned that earlier in the video. I'm still in Burlington, Vermont, and you know the Northeast has been going through this huge freeze. As I speak, it's January of 2014, and so we've had a lot of sub-zero temperatures. Well, this morning, about 7 o'clock, I go for a walk down at the beach. I live on Lake Champlain, which is a very beautiful lake, right nestled between the Green Mountains in Vermont and the Adirondacks in New York State. And I went for a walk on the lake this morning, as I always do, and the ice was all piled up, really beautiful. There's a beautiful view of the sun coming over Camel's Hump, over the mountains. Very beautiful morning, but it was really cold. It was like 0 degrees, and that was at like 7 in the morning. So you can imagine last night it must have been like 10 below, I don't know. But anyway, so if you're living in a place right now that's really cold, remember to wear a hat and a scarf. And if you're like me, you might want to just wear a scarf and a hat all day long, even when you're inside. So thanks so much. Again, if you have questions, it's Cornelia at corneliaward.com. Peace and blessings.